All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. If everybody could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. First up, I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. At this time, are there any public comments on agenda items only? There are not. And we will move right into discussion, continuing to review the proposed budget.
Well, thank you, and thank you, everybody, for being here on this extremely rainy Wednesday. A little change, a little Wednesday here after we've had a few days off for spring break. So we're going to go ahead and move along with our master overall budget review and by our object codes. And we're going to start with 1340, which is home economics. Home economics is known here as family and consumer sciences, but for the charts of accounting, it is called home economics. So we'll go ahead and start here at the middle school. At the top, you'll see we have one teacher at the middle school and kind of a basic supply list as you'll take a look through the listing here. Some replacement of some basic supplies, cookware, some of the skillets and pans that get used over time. You'll see line number 30, which is a cooking lab food allowance. We've seen a little bit of a variance and increase in food costs over the last couple of years when it comes to being able to utilize food labs. And our teachers, both at the middle school and high school, have done a great job of making sure that the labs that they do adhere, of course, to the standards, but making sure that they're cost conscious as well as they do different labs throughout the school year. Same with sewing supplies. I was surprised to see the cost of even fabric has also increased a lot as different projects occur throughout the programs as well. So I'll pause here on supplies and see if there's any questions for middle school family consumer science supplies. Hearing none, I believe there was a question on sewing machine maintenance, and I'll kind of turn that over. My understanding is that the sewing machines, we have several. They do some labs throughout, and they do get a little finicky. And every other year, they get serviced by a provider and a company who comes in to make sure that they are in working order.
Yeah, I talked to Ms. Hanshu today about that. So she does it every other year, but I believe when I look back, it's in the budget every year. So I think the plan is moving forward and talking with Dr. Fox and Mr. Holmes is, since it was in the budget for this past year, have the company come in and look at the existing sewing machines and provide the maintenance, and then we can kind of move forward from there. Because she said she does it like on every other year cycle, so it doesn't need to be in the budget every year if it's an every other year cycle. And if we can get a baseline on how much it costs, and like I said, it might even be cheaper to get new ones, so we have to just look at, she needs to call the company first, have them come in and give us kind of an estimate on that, and I think it can be removed from the budget this year because it's an every other year item, and we can kind of base it out. Yeah, I have to go down. I didn't go down and check out the number of sewing machines, but she's got. So what they do, I know at least in 7th grade, she has them. They use the sewing machine like we used to, like when I was in home ec, and they do patterns and they actually sew stuff together and create some different things that the kids use. And I know she had said with our 7th grade class being so big this year, it's getting a lot more wear and tear on the machines because they're using them a lot more often because there's more classes. So I think the plan is to have her kind of have the company come in and look over them and give us kind of a baseline of what it looks like when they need repaired and what repairing entails, I guess it would be.
I think the other thought would be is
depending upon how many machines we have the company come in every year, but only do half the machines, and lower, depending upon what the cost would be, is then you still have a small amount in the budget, but you're only doing, and then you have the machines kind of on a rotating cycle. You do half this year, the other half next year, and rotate it that way. But again, also, is it more cost effective to just replace the machines, depending upon what kind of machines? I don't know if she has embroidery machines or just regular, like, heavy duty sewing machines. I don't know what she has.
I'm gonna have her reach out to the company, and then we can kind of go from there and see what they're, and then just like you said, if we can do it on a rotating basis, that'd be good to have the constant budget line item in there, but not the double the price because we're only using it every other year. Because I think ever since I've gotten here, and from when Mr. Quigley was there, it's been $2,000, and it's not used every year. $2,000 is not used every year.
And do you know if we still teach textiles at the high school? Because we used to, there were sewing machines at the high school, but I don't think they're doing any sewing machine maintenance at the high school.
That is correct.
Is that because we're not using them anymore up there?
We do not have a textile class. That's that fashion design class was the class, I believe, that was doing a lot of the textiles and the design.
So I'm wondering if all those materials and equipment, where it is. I feel like I saw sewing machines in that room this year, but I may be wrong. But
They could still be, and on our way out, I will pay a visit.
that would be a good conversation to have, even with fabric and we may have bolts of fabric and stuff here that is sitting in a closet. If we know we're probably not going to have textiles or fabrics, it's not a state standard, not that that necessarily matters, but so that might be something. Yeah, but I did notice like the sewing machine maintenance cost was equal to like all the equipment in the industrial arts program, you know, like, so there's probably something that is a skew there. Thanks.
Line 74 on that sheet, we're down in high school now, is that okay?
Yeah.
Groceries for 9 foods classes, I'm guessing that means food classes, 9 food classes? Is that like the culinary
Right,
classes?
yeah, that'd just be the 9 sections of culinary.
Okay, is $11,000, do we know what that was this year? Is that number, do we know if it's accurate, or should it be increased potentially? I ask that because I have kids that were in that class, and, you know, for some people it's not a problem, but a lot of times it was asked for the students to bring food in to the class. So I'm assuming maybe that the number didn't cover what the need was of the class. So should we think about potentially adding something there if that number was this same last year? Because we know that people have been bringing things in, not to mention the fact that obviously groceries are more expensive than they've ever been. So it's going to be a higher figure going forward. I'm putting you on the spot. You probably don't know what the number is, but just something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I know that they did go over this and talk about like the increase in grocery cost and the amount of students that they're covering. We had over 170 students in those food classes. They're all full. And the ones that I think they're asking to bring in, I think are more specialized. It's not just their like independent food labs. I know they do a lot of different things. So it's definitely something we can look at and see if we need to increase that, because we don't want to require students to be bringing in groceries all the time.
Last year in the budget, there was a line item for food for labs, $5,500, and then fax supplies and materials of $7,150 for a total of $12,100. So it looks like it's an increase in the food.
I put that question in there because it seemed like the number was a lot higher. It looks like it's like 50% higher this year.
I think that's actually, if I'm doing the math here, it looks like a decrease to me because that would have been the schools combined, right? Those 2 line items. And there's 2 line items in here, one under middle school for cooking lab food allowance for $5,500, and then there's also the $11,000 for the high school.
I think they're separate.
Well, they are in here now. I mean, I'm not going to make a mountain out of a molehill or beat a dead horse, but I'm just saying, I don't know that with the number of kids, and if we're truly cooking for that number of kids in that class and giving them the cooking experience that they should be getting, that $11,000 is going to cover it, personally. And like I said, I didn't have a problem sending 2 pounds of hamburger in with my kid and going to the grocery store at 9 p.m. the night before the class, because that's when they communicate it to you. But, you know, like, some people probably do, so. No. Yes, you may, go ahead.
So for line 81, the Nordic Ware Classic Metal Cake Pan, covered cake pan, is that a typo or is it 200? Because $221 for a Nordic Ware, like that seems like it's a typo because unless there's more than one, like you can get those for
It's a really,
probably
really
$25 to
good-
$50.
It's a really
So
good cake pan.
is that? It's a really good cake pan for $221 for one cake. I mean, yeah, like, is there? Because I was like, what is that like? And I mean, and the same thing for the one below. It's like $131 bunt pan, angel food cake pan, like. So
Yeah, my guesstimate is there's
like, is it multiples and it doesn't say that it's multiples?
Yeah, so we'll
'Cause
go
if
back
it's
through
just
and look at-
one, that's a, yeah.
Yeah, we're certainly not paying
It better
$221 for a
cook the
pan.
cake for you.
Mixes the batter, cooks the cake, it does the whole thing.
It does, yeah. Yeah, like I just looked it up and the Nordic pan is $25 and I'm like, that has to be a typo. Yeah, like I was like,
I think what makes that a little curious is that when they have the KitchenAid, they do list 3 there, right? So, and is that just kind of on dovetailing on there a little bit? Are they replacing the KitchenAids or are they getting 3 new ones? Do you know that?
I do know that as far as the mixers, is that what you're asking about? Yeah, that they would be replacements.
Replacing.
Of what they already have. Yeah.
The Nordic covered Nordic Ware Classic Metal, 8 of those is the quantity. They're $27.60 a piece. What's the other one?
You may just want to put 8 in that line, just so it makes more sense then to everybody.
That's probably the same for the
The,
angel food.
yeah, the angel food pans are probably similar.
Because it has a hole in it, so it should be cheaper.
That was, it does, it has a hole in the middle. I'm trying to look at, what line was the angel food? Do you guys remember seeing? 82, thanks. And we will go back and take a look.
There are 4 of those.
4? And we'll take a look at the food labs in that line as well, because last year it was $12,100. So we will go back through and take a look and increase that as appropriate.
12,000 for total,
12,000 for the high school.
just the high school.
That's correct.
Choose people bringing food in.
Right. All right, that rounds out family consumer science. We'll go into technical education. 1350. In technical education at the middle school, we have 1 teacher. We do have some equipment replacements and repair that he is placed in there as a placeholder, as pieces of equipment certainly need to be serviced as outlets go, as cords go, and as equipment just over time needs to be looked at and made sure it's in proper working order. Lines 14 through 48 are the supplies for the technical education middle school program.
I'm beginning to see a bit of a theme between the equipment maintenance at $2,000. I don't know if that was like a standard entry from Quigs from the past.
I'm not sure, and sometimes it's hard to tell. I mean, obviously, a teacher will know throughout the year what needs to be serviced, but as to when you bring in somebody to service it, what that range could be is as simple as replacing the plug, or does it need a full engine repair, or does that piece of equipment need scrapped, unfortunately? So, yeah, I think it's been a pretty standard number.
Okay.
That's a really good point.
So what happens if it's not used? Then where does that,
If that piece of equipment becomes unusable,
no. What happens if the $2,000 isn't necessary for anything?
it stays in the budget.
Okay.
Yep. It stays in the budget. And that's why this gives us a little bit more control over those cost and object categories as well.
Okay.
I know there are some yearly maintenance pieces that go along with a lot of the equipment in there, like such as the joiner blades will come off every year. It gets sent out to be sharpened. The same thing with like the planer blades, they'll get sent out to be sharpened as well. So I know that that's included into it as well. But, you know, being that that's a smaller lab, and let's just say something goes wrong with the joiner or the planer throughout the year, that's the only one in there. So it's not like you have a backup. So that could shut down all your projects. So that's why that money really needs to be there for that, because that could really shut down a class.
Diving into high school, it's a one-teacher program. You'll see at the beginning here some repairs and maintenance, some parts for small engine. They do a small engine repair class, and a lot of the gaskets, some of the rings and bolts, spark plugs, those types of ancillary equipment are needed on a varying basis based upon what needs to be repaired and replaced over time for those engines. Same you'll see here for just some maintenance for the blades, router bits, your basic repairs, as Mr. Ward stated. The supplies primarily you'll see in line 73, which is in 74, which is lumber, and going down to some home improvement items with the home improvement class that was added, the breaker load circuit, the box, as well as making sure and looking at some wire and some wiring, wire connectors and wire nuts to be able to do that small electrical components necessary for the home repair. Certainly something I should probably go in and learn a little bit more about. And then under new equipment, some power tools. Those are replacement tools, tools that are needed, tools that have passed their life expectancy, in addition to some tools as they get into a varying different classroom stations.
Can I ask, that's the one, I had a question about that too, because the fixed base router, to me, is a power tool. And there's one of them, don't go back, whoever's scrolling there. And that's like 199, which I would think is a power tool. But then you have like 89, is this another $2,000, just every year we do $2,000 for power tools? Like, I would be, and again, I just wanted to know, is that just an amount we put in just in case we need a cordless drill, or do we actually know what power tools we have?
Yeah.
It seems to me like it's just a catch-all. If something breaks, we'll be able to fix it. And I understand that. And if it is, in the past, have we used $2,000 to replace, a circular saw or whatever? Just a question to ask.
So I do know this. I think as they begin to use more and more different tools and different rotations and different stations and the various different classes, there are some tools that probably haven't been used, haven't even been in existence here, that he's adding to those to be able to be utilized for different roofing and this drywall and the different categories that they're doing in home, the home maintenance program. And yes, when a tool no longer works effectively or is past its safety components, it does get discarded and needs to be discarded. So I think it is, as terms of breakdown, we need 5 drills, we need 6 cordless drills, we need 7 batteries. No, but I think it's to allow for as things go, because certainly those the battery operated ones go very quickly sometimes. Looking at a DeWalt, they last, but the batteries can go, and when they go, they're not going to charge anymore. And that certainly can lead frustration to a teacher who's trying to do stations.
Yeah, I certainly don't work at the high school. I can't speak for Mr. Moore and what he's put in there, but from being a prior tech ed teacher, what I think's happening here when we're talking about the the home improvement piece as opposed to what you're doing in the lab. So like, let's say we're going to drill a hole, right? In the lab, you're going to use the drill press to drill a hole in a fixed piece of lumber. Whereas you're looking at home repair, you're actually using a DeWalt cordless drill to go drill a hole in something. So it's the same thing, but it's actually being used differently per se.
So in that instance, like with the listener, you're talking to a person who has a husband, you always need a new tool for something. But, I mean, every project requires a new tool. But with the power, like with your cordless drills and stuff like that, are we replacing the whole drill, or are we just buying new batteries? Because we can buy new lithium batteries as long as we buy from a manufacturer that, like if we're buying DeWalt, we can still buy replacement batteries, and the drill itself will last as long as they're not throwing it on the ground.
Yeah, I'm
and
not sure. You're
beating
talking to
it
a
all
guy that
around.
only goes to Harbor Freight? No, there's
I
nothing
think
wrong with that. But
I think a lot of this stuff is probably going to be new equipment for that class. It's going to be stuff that lasts a very long time. It's just a different concept. So like we have a table saw, for example, too. That's to cut a line, but we don't have a Sawzall probably to go and do the work that a home improvement, project would take. So I'm assuming that's what that's going to be.
And the only reason I asked is because there's a specificity, specifically, there's a router for $199, and then there's like $2,000 power tools, right?
Sure.
Like one time we're being specific and one time we aren't.
yeah, that specific router and 90 and 91 go together. So that router for the Bosch, that fixed base router goes with number 90. So that CNC machine has the router built into it, and then you'll see later on a piece of equipment, a program that is used to operate that CNC router.
So the CNC, it says software, but what I heard you say is machine. So is that a machine? Is it it's
table.
new, and then if we're getting a new tech ed teacher, is there going to be any possibility that the curriculum will change, that this will not be necessary? That, can you talk to that a little bit? Or no? Okay.
I can speak to the equipment for you. So like Dr. Fox says, that router goes into that piece of machinery. So that machinery, the number 90 there, I believe. Mm-hmm. So that would actually be like the computer software and then the bigger table piece that actually drives it, and the router would actually do the cutting. So that machine, more than likely, you can go and cut out like signs out of a bigger piece of wood, per se. Like, you take a piece of plywood, and then you could design on the computer what you want it to do, and that machine then would cut out the design that you created then onto the piece of wood. So you would have like a wooden sign. That's just one example of something that it could do.
So can that router then also come out and be used as like a handheld
Yeah, it
router
can.
that you
It can
can route edges and do
Yeah.
stuff like that? Okay,
But
so
there's
it's
a good chance that they probably already have a router machine that's, once again, in the wood lab, me not knowing, but most wood labs
Have-
would have a router that's specific for running, say, a board there and putting an edge on a board to round it off or create that molding or whatever.
Okay.
This router there, that's a smaller one that you would mount onto the actual
Onto
CNC machine then, and that would actually do the cutting.
Do the cutting.
Of that sign there, yeah.
okay, yeah.
So I'm still a little bit confused. So the 5250 is a table that has the software, that it includes the software. But Dr. Fox, you were mentioning that there's going to be another line item somewhere else that has software, or is that not the case? Maybe I misunderstood you. I might not have heard what you said correctly.
So I think 90 is the table with the software combined in it.
Okay.
And in terms of like curriculum, and if something happens in terms of a program, will that change the outcome of this? We write curriculum, and we empower our teachers to write the curriculum based upon what we believe the students need. And our goal certainly would be to continue that curriculum, and hopefully, as we continue to have those inspiring teachers who are going to be able to continue to see that need and take what was there or is there and continue to build on that. And certainly, as time evolves, our hope is that it continually, as we know with curriculum, it ever evolves and changes, as certainly the needs change, and as more and more technology emerges, things are going to continue to expand and evolve.
With something this specific, and maybe it's not specific, I don't know, like, would it be prudent to wait until your new tech ed person came in before you bought this? To make sure that it's something that Or no, I'm getting shaking heads no, like I have no idea what I'm talking about.
No, I think it's a pretty good piece of equipment. I think it's an industrial piece of equipment that's used universally.
Okay.
I think it can be used in a lot of different avenues and a lot of different approaches. And
Okay.
I think even it could be used by other programs, if I'm correct in saying that, Mr. Ward, not just in the technical ed
So this is
classroom.
like similar to working with a 3D printer, similar to that, but it's a different application.
Right.
Moving forward, when we look at careers and things like that, this is a key missing piece, I believe, in our district as far as like what the students are able and being exposed to and being able to do. That CNC, computer numerical controlled application, and having that knowledge, it's hard to put like a dollar amount on that. It's
No, I don't mean that we wouldn't get it at all,
right.
but I meant like, would you not buy, I don't even know, like, do they come in different brands? Like, would you not buy a Shark because is the current, would there be a preference by one or the other that would it be worthwhile waiting until the
right.
new
When we
person
talk
came in?
about the CNC, it all works off the same code. So like you're pretty much doing the same thing with the different types of software.
Okay.
Not knowing the size of this router right here, but looking at the price, that's extremely reasonable for an industrial piece of equipment.
Yeah,
It
I'm,
does that.
yeah. Again, I'm not questioning the price on that. I was just
Sure.
wondering whether there would be, before we purchase this specific piece of equipment, would there be another piece of equipment that somebody might like that's similar to it? That's all I'm saying, but I could be wrong.
Well, and I have a question too. So being that this Shark piece of equipment, it feels like it's like the brain. That's how I'm sort of seeing it. And then we can add the router to it. And then it's like a computer too, correct? So will it need software updates? Like what's going to be the regular maintenance on that? And will that cost be included in the 2,000? Or what if something goes wrong with it?
So that's
What is
really-
our backup?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Without me knowing that specific piece of equipment, it's hard for me to answer that. So I know, like, working on with some CNC machines in the past, you don't need to do any updates. What's on the computer is good. But then, for the higher end stuff, which this is a higher end piece of equipment, there could be some updates. A lot of stuff, Christine could probably answer that a little bit better than me, but, a lot of that stuff gets pushed out for free from these companies as well.
Well, yeah, my concern is that we do have that available to us, meaning, if it does need updated or something does go wrong, we're in the middle of the school year, and now this thing crashes or does whatever, what is our backup
Right.
to make sure that the teacher has, what they need to get the job done?
No,
So,
that's a very good question. And I don't have specifics and good answers for you here. All I'm going to say is that's an industrial piece of equipment. They're rated for so many hours and what it can handle as far as what material you can put through it. Judging by what I can see just from the title and the price of it, it's a very good piece of equipment. It should last. And you shouldn't have problems with it. You shouldn't.
Should certainly be support that's associated with the purchase of it as well, and that ongoing support. Absolutely. Yep. Always an implied warranty anytime you buy a new piece of equipment, and then there's always an extended warranty. And then you develop that relationship with the vendor to be able to make sure that there's that ongoing support. And the support to install as well, and the support through the programs. And usually and typically there's updates that are associated with that and pushed out to make sure that the software is up to date.
Just a general note that none of these items will go out on a purchase order until July 1. So there's some time between now and then to work out some situations.
All right. I believe that rounds out our technical education. We'll take a drive now into technology. Under technology, you'll see we have the director of technology, and we have two outstanding members of our technology team. We have technology that focuses more on our servers, and a technician that focuses on the hardware sides of things. But they do an outstanding job as a kind of the three-headed monster, if you will, to help on all of our technology needs. Is that a good, appropriate term? Sorry about that. Affectionately. Archaeola is our capital area online academy. Provides the content for our Blackhawk Academy. We provide several of our own teachers as well as that ability to reach out to parents. And we continue to work on bringing as much back in-house as we can for our own Black Hawk Academy students.
Is that alt ed as well?
Yes, yes. With teachers going out as well to make sure that they, especially students under special education or IDEA, the case managers and special ed teachers will go out on a regular basis to support the students. Technical services, we have our WAN, the Wide Area Network and Internet. That's, for lack of a better term, Christine, correct me if I'm wrong, that's our Internet. Yes. Managed servers. And I'm just going to go ahead and see if you have any questions on anything and turn it over to Mrs. Matash. Nobody needs to hear.
There's nothing in the GoDaddy certificates. There's no line. Is there a reason for that? Or-
It's just a 2-year renewal, so it's just a placeholder that we will have it
Okay.
another year.
Okay.
No, it's, because it's a multi-year renewal, it is more than that. Yeah, I can look.
Can we assume that the rest of those renewals are annual renewals? Because I love that you put that placeholder in there. I think that's great.
Some of them, yes, so the other renewals here that we see are annual. Yep.
$1,200 was the certificates.
It was total. And some are a 2-year renewal and some a 3-year. So I know I was reading some of the questions. I can answer those that were placed on the sheet. Specifically the handheld radios, we did purchase new handheld radios last year for all admin, the admin team offices. We did not replace the maintenance and custodians handheld radios, but we did take away their cell phones. So they no longer have a cell phone for communication. They have a radio. They are old radios and their batteries are continuing to die. We have replaced the batteries, but they are out of date, so we want to make sure that they have a current communication need. The handheld radios, so it is for 7 handheld radios, that amount that's in there.
Hold on, Christine.
Yep.
So it looked like we were buying new radios for like $3,200. Is that the 7?
Yep, so it's $450 a radio, 7.
So I figured maybe have 25 radios in the district maybe or something? How is it $1,000 maintenance for them?
So it is, let me just make sure. Anytime we need them updated, so sometimes they'll have to come in and program them. That's not included. And we just found an older one right now that needed to be programmed. That does include batteries, so if we need to replace the batteries. We not only use them for admin, administration, bus, but also for elementary playgrounds and sports. So we probably have more than 25. Licensing, and actually our FCC licensing renewal is up now, so we have that to purchase as well.
We definitely found it much more efficient moving away from cell phones and utilizing the radios for real-time communication across the district.
Other questions were security cameras. We do have 2,000 of potential new cameras. So I do have just a line item for potentially new. For one camera, and actually we have some extra cameras. We had a grant. We replaced many of our cameras, so we have quite a few extras that can be reprogrammed. But again, that cost for the camera company to come in and reprogram them, and really to do one camera, it's about $700. So that would only cost or cover installing 2 cameras. So we do have the $4,000. So the $2,000 would be for potentially new cameras that couldn't be used with the old. The $4,000 would be to repurpose those cameras, or if one of the camera servers went down and we needed to replace that, that funds would come from there.
Weren't we working, I don't remember this specifically, but weren't our cameras installed with a company from China that we were no longer legally allowed to work with anymore? Is this the same company? We got rid of all of those. It's all new with the grant money that we had before.
Yes, through a grant from the U.S. Department of Justice. So kudos to Mrs. Matosh and Ms. Snyder. Worked very diligently about a year ago on that grant. Very, very complex grant, and we're still finalizing the ending of that grant. And we used capital reserve and made a motion and approval for a capital reserve of $44,000. So there was a small contribution to us, but it was a very large grant to replace those cameras and replace the platform that they're on as well. So they're not now they're IP cameras, and they've, knock on wood, they've been well.
So hopefully this 4,000 plus, I think 2,000, whatever, we may not spend near that money because the cameras haven't been here longer than a year, and
we may
probably
not,
won't need them, but
sometimes
it's good. We need to have it in there maybe.
Yeah, sometimes they get. It doesn't take much to get a lens that's covered and or something happens and it gets bumped and it needs to be reprogrammed and readjusted. And that it's just getting somebody out with a lift, moving our lift over, readjusting it, getting it back online. Those types of things can add up though. And we just want to be very diligent about that as well. And sometimes, you'll see a spot where we need one and we have to make sure we put one there because of the coverage that's needed. So it provides that aspect as we continue to look at areas to provide the safest and securest environment we can.
And I know this doesn't matter, but I think I put in there, it would be nice, maybe, I don't know if it would matter, if it was like under safety and security, because poor Christine's getting, she's
okay with that.
She's taking
yeah.
she's taking
Yeah.
all this stuff under technology. I know it doesn't necessarily matter.
We did
but-
talk about that earlier, absolutely. And she kind of smiled and said, at the end, it all comes down to the same team anyway.
Absolutely. The 3-headed team. The other question was the employee training and development. This is actually it could be for teachers going to conferences, the technology department going to conferences, subs for that, certificates for our network system administrator. He has to keep up on all of the certificates, stay knowledgeable of those items. So it encompasses a large area. And then the last question was technology with the ESSERS 3. And I don't know, Dr. Fox, if you want to take that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So there you'll see line number like 79, line number 98. The line number 125, line number 132. We were able to utilize ESSERS funding, and in particular, there are certain subcategories in ESSERS to extend it out because you're allowed to use up to 3-year partnerships for ESSERS. So that's why you'll see if it says 24-25 school year, that $19,125 is all set with the revenue from ESSERS. That won't happen again, meaning that line number 79 next year won't say ESSERS, and there won't be a revenue item for that.
So I asked that question because I know like PAE-TEP was being paid for with ESSERS 3 money, but PAE-TEP is something we will do annually, So I guess
Something we have done prior to ESSERS 2, absolutely.
So I guess my question is, all that I don't know how much are we getting for ESSERS 3 total? Do we know that off the top of our head?
I
I figured on just those items alone, it's about $200,000.
So there's
just on
200,
these.
so of the $200,000 that we don't have to use taxpayer money for because of SRS 3, how much of that is stuff that's in this budget that will be in the budget next year? Like I know in the past we tried, and I don't know that we were successful, but we tried to use our SRS money toward one-time purchases so that all of a sudden we don't have like all these additional staff members and stuff we have to pay. So I just was curious. I know the PIE TEP's the only one I could think of because I don't know all these other things that well.
So in the tech budget, it's the PA ETEP that would be in next year's budget. The IXL, iReady, and I think there was one more. They're 3-year, we're paying with ESSERS for 3 years.
But
So-
they-
and Linkit. Oh,
but-
wait, Linkit's just 1 year. PA ETEP, iReady, and IXL for 3 years.
But they don't go away. It's not like
Correct.
it's not like we're going to get rid of IXL. So I guess my question is, if we get down to the end of it and we're like, here's our budget, we need to remember here's $200,000 that's in our budget that we will have to pull that money somewhere because it's ESSERS is going away. So that does that make, am I making sense? Like,
The only, when we did our ESSERS plan, and we presented our ESSERS plan, we did it in a way that we were not going to add items that were not previously there, that we had to, at some point, make a decision if we're going to have it or not. What we decided to do was utilize some funding that could also alleviate the need in some way, shape, and form of taxpaying burden and continue programs. Because with ESSERS, you either can add additional or continue the programs that you were having. We decided to continue the programs that we were having. Line number 79 is one item that was new, that was not in before, and it was presented on last year. That was a data warehouse, but we got rid of performance tracker and added linked it.
and I'm
linked it instead.
not angry or upset about that, but what I'm saying is at the end of the year when we say, or when we're done with this budget and we say, okay, you know, we're predicting a $200,000 deficit, but the reality is it's a $400,000 deficit because there's $200,000 that's being paid for with our ESSERS that won't be here next year. As opposed to, I see there was like a movie studio or TV studio put in the middle school, as opposed to we're paying for that with ESSERS money because then that's a one-time deal. And again, I'm not arguing one way or the other. I just, for the sake of communication, I think we need to be very clear. Here's $200,000 of things that we are going to continue to pay for, but we will not be getting the ESSERS money to pay for it.
But in next year's budget, the media center or whatever you referenced that we could have paid for with ESSERS won't be in next year's budget. So
that was my point.
It will even out. And like if you're 400, so even if you're 200 and 400 next year, you're not going to have that 200 there that was expense. So if the 200 is gone, it's going to even out.
No, I'm not being clear. I don't think that was my point. Was the TV studio is, for lack of another way of saying, optional. These things are not optional. These things are going to be in our budget every year. So something like a TV studio will only be in our budget 1 year. It was paid for ESSERS. We don't have to budget for that next year. But everything in here, if I understand it right, that ESSERS is paying for, we will have to pay for next year, but we will not have the $200,000 ESSERS money.
So
and
the
I'm just
only,
saying we got to remember. I'm just saying we have to remember there's $200,000 that is unaccounted for.
yeah, next year there will be no money from ESSERS in this budget whatsoever. The only item that will not, so we put it in here as a placeholder and reminder for ourselves. The only item in this listing where it's labeled under ESSERS 3 that will be into the general fund budget for 25-26 will be Linkit. And remember, these are all discretionary spendings too. You can say, we don't want these programs at all. These are not required. The only one I would probably argue a little bit would be PAE TEP, just because of the management of the evaluation systems. And that one can be streamlined, and that's about $11,000, $12,000 per year. The reason why it's 29 is because it was a multi-year agreement.
So getting back to my original question, which I asked on the spreadsheet, basically is, can we know, and we might not know it now, how much money are we getting for ESSERS 3? And then of that, how much of that is being used on items that the administration plans to include in next year's budget? Because that's like saying a $200,000 bill that we're not accounting for.
So I think you're asking for what recurring expenses will there be that there'll be no ESSERS money to pay for?
That we're currently paying for ESSERS money.
Correct.
How much is that? Plus, I was just curious how much ESSERS 3 is.
We can get that for you.
And that's
Yeah, I think where I'm hearing what you're, and I have the same concern. I actually had it on my list. That's why I knew about the $200,000 because I added it up. If I had a windfall of money that came into my household, I wouldn't use it the way I would budget. I would not use it to pay my monthly mortgage with, because I know that that windfall of money is not going to be there, and I'm going to have to figure out how to manage my budget when that's gone. I might use it to pay for a new car, I might, or whatever, but I wouldn't use it on a regular monthly budget thing. And my concern is, while I understand we didn't add anything new into the budget, is where Mike's concern is that when we have whatever the deficit is going to come out to this year, it really is almost misleading that it's that kind of a deficit, because it's even more than that, because we aren't going to have, as you pointed out, that money's not coming in next year. And so, I mean, I don't know. I know you just mentioned that some of this stuff is discretionary. I don't know enough about these software, but there's, $360,000 worth of them.
So allow me
here.
to
So, but,
first, in terms of ESSERS, it is down to here. It is down to here because it is expended. After this year, it's gone. What's in here has already been allocated and dispersed. The plan is done. Where our goal is to close it up. There's very little that's being implemented in this budget because it's already been allocated. It's done. So you'll see some items as we move forward in terms of devices, because there are certain categories at ESSERS we can only use it for. Learning loss, it could be used for supplemental instruction. There are certain elements and categories that we were permitted to use it on. And remember, this was a plan that was a couple years. There was ESSERS 3, ESSERS 2, ESSERS 1, that dates way back. ESSERS 2, which just is closed and finalized, and now this ARP ESSERS 3. And this plan right now is all but done. And you'll see some of the summer programs that we're running this year, such as the Early Birds program and the STEAM program, are coming out of the learning loss experience. We'll need to discuss if that's something moving forward after this year that we want to do, because that won't be in the budget.
Right, and I'm fine with that. I think I disagree with Leanne a little bit, although I think we're saying the same thing. If I had an influx of money coming into my household budget, I would want to use that toward my monthly bills. And if there's extra left over, we would put it into a savings account. I wouldn't say, Kim, here's $40,000, go buy a new wardrobe. You know what I mean? And that sounds like what we're doing. We got the extra money. We're spending it on things we need. We're not just saying, hey, we have the extra money, let's get something frivolous. My whole point was, let's just remember this money is being spent on something we're going to budget every year, and it won't be there next year. So there's like $200,000 that we're going to have to come up with next year unless we cut these things, which the administration feels we should continue to renew. I have no problem that we did that. We need to remember that we did that,
And I do think I need to clarify, I wasn't saying to purchase something frivolous, just go out and spend it for the sake of spending. What I was trying to point out is in my own household, I would do it on a one-time purchase, not on something that I need to figure out where I'm going to find it in my budget once that windfall of money is gone. And I think, like, to the defense of Dr. Fox, some of this ESSERS money came to us before he even came here. And I do remember us having that discussion that we're going to use ESSERS on things that will only be for one-time things and not being used for stuff that are in our
And I think that's the point. I
budget.
hear you saying there are no one-time purchase items in here that would be covered under ESSERS.
Well,
Am I right?
No, I think we're going to move on to some, because there's some devices in here that are one-time purchases that will be covered under ESSERS. But there's certain categories and percentages. The ESSERS the American Rescue Plan was extremely complicated in how it broke down. And there were only certain categories you could use certain funds for, and eligible categories. What we said is we didn't want, besides our summer programs, start all new programs that we couldn't sustain.
No, I understood.
So we were trying to see if there are things that could be offset to allow us to continue with other areas. Because remember, this was previously. One thing we also looked at is one of the things that you can use ESSERS for is the sustainability of programs, because everybody knew it was an extremely difficult time for all taxpayers during these very fiscally
Which
tough
goes
and
back to
challenging.
my original question that I put on that spreadsheet is, can we know which one of these ESSERS things are one-time purchases and which ones are going to be a continual drain on our budget so that we know that amount we're going to have to make up for?
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess that was just the
Absolutely.
question.
That's a really good, okay. And as we go through and you see ESSERS, I can denote if it's going to be a multi-year or a 1 year. And I'll go ahead and start with line number 79, which is link it. That's a multi-year if we choose it to be a multi-year. The one thing I do want to say, and I don't want to go on a 19-hour tirade, and I apologize, is anytime we purchase a program, we as a district make sure that that program fits the needs that we have, A, and B, is it being utilized? And if it's not being utilized, we have to take a deep look as to why isn't it being utilized. Have we not trained our teachers and our staff and us on the utilization of it? And does it function the way we want it to? And if all those questions are no, and we're not, then we don't renew it. You'll see several software this year coming up that are not in this budget again because we couldn't answer those questions. Or we found a piece of software or technology that was redundant of each other. So we decided not to.
What do you mean by multi-year? Like linked it? Does that mean like the $19,125 will pay for a subscription for like 3 years? Is that what you mean?
So in an instance of line 79, the $19,125 unfortunately is paying for 1 year for that program. Let's go down though to line 98.
Well, no, go back up to there though. So what we're saying is, I'm assuming this is something valuable, or if it's data warehousing that the administration wants as opposed to, what did we have before, performance tracker, not a fan. Then I'm assuming that that's a $19,125 annual renewal subscription that moving forward will not be covered by ESSERS. We'll have to cover it.
Correct.
But, so when you said multi-year, are there other things differently?
Yes, and they'll be denoted here. You'll see line number 98, the Pennsylvania ETEP, Electronic Teacher Evaluation Portal. That is an agreement we were able to sign up until the year 2027. So not this year, so 24, 25, 26, 27. We'll have 2 more years in the budget that this will be covered.
So maybe we do like Christine did and put a note in there that this amount will need to come out of the budget at this point. You know how she did that?
Yeah, she was too good on that. Yeah, absolutely. 100%, we can do that. I see what you're saying.
Thanks.
Absolutely. And that's why they were in here, so we also see them as well and denote where the revenue stream is coming from and know that when they're going to be removed. But we'll note that on the side as Mrs. Matash did as well.
Christine, for some of these, like reading eggs and math seeds, do we pay a subscription for those yearly?
They
to
are
have-
yearly,
To have an
yes.
access. And then for like things like the apps for communication, is that under technology or does that fall under special education?
It would fall under this technology, so
Okay.
any kind of miscellaneous. I mean, we right now have multiple of those licenses that we can give out to the students that need it. So we're probably pretty good on our number
Okay.
as of now.
Yeah, because I just see on line 131, it just says Susquenita Middle School for miscellaneous computer apps and software, but I wasn't sure, like, if you guys, like, where that fell for that.
Yeah, so it would be under that.
And then the other question I had was, it's like line 173, 180 for the 3D printer filament. So are the schools using 25 plus rolls of PLA filament a year?
They do print quite a bit, and I will say they're not going to buy it unless they need it.
Okay.
Right, so it's not
'Cause
something.
it dries
Right,
out.
we do
once
not
you-
purchase a large quantity, we purchase as needed.
Okay. 'Cause I was like, that's a lot of 3D printer filament.
Curious about the $20,000 for hard drives, memory printers, parts, cables. Are we really
That
spending
is,
that much?
well, that's all encompassing of everything. Everything for any kind of replacements. So keyboards, if.
Okay,
I
so
mean,
it's hardware, accessories, the whole kit and
it's
caboodle.
everything.
Okay.
And it really is hard to come up with that specific
Of
number.
course.
Right.
All right.
Christine, why is it device refresh? It looks like it's what, like 40 or 60? Whoever's scrolling that just,
It's
it was
me-
right there.
It's me scrolling.
It was right there.
If you could
Right-
tell me a line
little-
item.
Right there, 166.
Thank you.
I thought that was more like was it 140 or 160?
So we did put it as 200,000 because there was discussion of the iPad 10 versus the iPad 11. Our quote was the iPad 10. If we decide to go with the iPad 11, I'm not sure what that cost is because it's not out yet.
I think we went ahead with the 10% variance, looking at, but, again, it hasn't, unfortunately, at this point been released.
And we had
That's
decided,
more than 10%, though.
but didn't we decide we would definitely only do the refresh if we could get the 11, correct? We went there? Yeah, okay.
I think back when we talked about technology refresh, I had asked about the question of refreshing every 4 years, which would put that number much lower and much more economical. So I'm still concerned with the $200,000 number being put in there for device refresh. I just think it's high.
So we took what we kind of discussed in our device refresh analysis, and you're right, it was 11% from what the one, I think it was, I'll have to look back at the numbers, but it's a little bit of variation certainly in there, because what we didn't want to do, we'd rather come back and say it's lower than come back to you and say it's higher.
I don't think we made any definite decision I know Mrs. Singley suggested the first through 12 versus the K through 12, and I don't think we ever came back. My understanding is we were waiting to see what the 11 came out and get some quotes and then have that further discussion on what the refresh would look like.
When we did the device refresh comparison to the Chromebooks, I'm not trying to revisit the Chromebook concept. I just have a question that there was $0 in the iPad cost for license. I don't know what that license is, because the license costs were built into the Chromebook cost for the comparison. So is there anything in this budget that addresses the license, which would be what you would need for an iPad? I don't know, I'm asking.
There are no licenses for iPads.
Oh, okay. So do you know what it is then for the Chromebook? Like, what's the license for Chromebook?
So that, I don't have that sheet in front of me. I think
It was like $23 or something like that.
some of the quotes, it's like $20 per, but that last quote that we received had the licensing fee built in, but it was about $20.
Yeah, but what is that licensing for what?
For Google. It's
Oh,
to be
okay.
able to have them in Google.
So being the computer, non-computer person, so when you're looking at things like Jamf, like what is that?
It is where we manage the iPads and Apple TVs and laptops, so we can put profiles on, push out Wi-Fi.
So is that an Apple thing? Okay, I'm asking, wait, Christine, is that an Apple thing or what? Like,
we
would you
use
have to have Jamf if you were not using Apple products?
We wouldn't have to have Jamf, but we would have to potentially have something else.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. So in terms of the amount of money that you guys, that are listed in here for devices with ESSERS 3, which I think originally were listed as iMacs and iMac or whatever. Now they're listed as desktop, laptop with ESSERS 3 money. Once we buy them, when they need to be replaced, we will now have to find that in our budget to replace them. Or will these be one-time purchases and when they go, we don't buy them
I
again?
mean, they are replacing devices now, but less. So we're decreasing the number. But yeah.
We currently have devices that we've purchased as a district that are at their end of their life expectancy, so we're replacing them. But what we're also doing is taking some of these stationary larger labs and making them into some of the more mobile carts. But you'll also see there's a few desktops that are there as well for certain classrooms and certain printing labs and printing stations that are needed. So we're trying to be more resourceful with what we have and more versatile. But yes, essentially, when the life expectancy of these devices goes, yeah, they will ultimately need to be replaced at some point. 6, 8, who knows how many years?
How old
Probably
are these
8+.
right now, the ones that we're replacing?
If you wait a second, I can tell
Okay.
you.
Christine, while you're looking that up, when we do the desktops, sorry, I know that they're here. Are we looking at Apple desktops?
I mean, we would look at what was available, potentially. iMac would be,
Have we looked at the versus the actual iMac system, the smaller Mac that you can then use any monitor with, that then would give us more portability, that you could move that from, it's cheaper, as well as you can move it from room to room if you needed to versus just having the whole big
We
iMac system.
did look at that for the computer lab on the 3rd floor last year. We would have to purchase the monitor, the keyboard, the mice for them. In the end, it may have saved us a little bit. I mean, we can definitely revisit that again. I think it's a great idea, especially because you can get a better system for less.
You can custom build and then you can get nicer monitors.
Yep.
That you can get curved monitors and you can get those for probably $200-300.
Yeah.
And I think the smaller
Mac Minis.
Mac Minis
Yeah.
are way cheaper than you can probably buy a $1,500 iMac.
We can definitely look at that again, I think, for these situations.
The only reason I'm asking about the age of those devices is just curious if we could, since the ESSERS money doesn't have to be used by 2024, could we push the replacement of them? Or are they completely
They
out
are
of?
old. I will tell you that they are, I mean, I thought I had it in this document, but it's in a different one. They are at the end of life. Their time to be replaced. But I thought, it was my understanding we had to have the ESSERS spent by.
There is an expense, a deadline on the expenses of ESSERS. You can always ask for an emergency extension, but I don't think this would constitute an emergency extension.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought ESSERS money had to be earmarked by a certain point, but didn't have to be spent until 2026, which is why we're able to
Well, in
spend some of those
certain
licensing.
programs, yeah, you can extend to a 3-year agreement. That is basically you're paying a one lump sum, but it extends over those 3 years for a program.
Okay.
So in essence, though, you're making that one-time payment, but covers those multiple years.
these would have to be added to those things that we're gonna have to try to find in the budget for these devices that we're replacing.
In 6 or 8 years, yes.
I know you had mentioned about when we talk about these budgets over, we know that there's very little discretionary spending, right? Especially when we're looking at deficit budget. But I wouldn't begin to tell you, when you said, well, these software applications are really up to you. This is discretionary. We don't have to do these or engage them. I wouldn't begin to tell you which one, because I don't even know what they are, which ones they are. All I know is there's a really big number there, $360,000 on really software apps. Like,
I think what I meant by that statement, I apologize, is certainly discretionary spending is discretionary spending. I mean, it's a small amount, but when we look at supplies, that's all discretionary spending, really, when you think of it in programs. The only thing we're really tied to is our utilities, our buses, special education, and our salaries and benefits for contracted employees. That's all a requirement. Everything else really technically is discretionary. And the sad part is we're going through a lot of our exercise for a very little piece of that pie. And I get with what you're saying. And what I would do then is, like that exercise that I kind of spoke about, is what we would do anytime we continue with these programs. A, is it meeting our educational expectation? B, are we using it? And we get usage reports. Is it redundant to another program that we have? Or is there another program that came out that's a little bit less expensive, that has more features, that can fit with what we need? So all of those things we certainly look at and make sure that they're being used, and being used effectively in the hands of our outstanding teachers.
right, and as I said, I am not anti-technology. I want you to know that. I'm just trying to figure out how we manage this budget. Even if we raise taxes, we're not gonna have enough money in this budget. And so I'm trying to figure out, how do we do that? How do we still provide for the educational growth and development of our students, and do it in a way that's, prudent, And so
Yeah,
that's why I question
that's
about the
certainly-
device refresh and the amount of money that's being put into that every year. Can we do something that will still provide that for our students? That goes beyond just, it's really nice, or not.
If I can comment on that too, Dr. Fox, I like everything I'm seeing in this budget for the most part. I've been asking questions, but I also see stuff that I like, that I think, do we need this? I'd like it, but do we need it? And so the last time we got an update was a long time ago, and it was kind of like, pie in the sky budget. We were looking at a $4 million deficit. So it's one thing that's a little difficult is looking at this, thinking, I love this is great, and then not knowing if we need to cut, and if we need to cut, how much we need to cut, or is that something we're just going to go through all this, and then the administration we just say, the administration, as Phil has been known to say, cut $1 million and get back to me, or because so it's do we know where we are the end game, basically?
So right now, currently, we're going through each program, and what we're trying to do is, we certainly have done, the first time is a cursory review. Then we met with our principals, we met with our directors, and we met with them a second time, and we continue to meet and go over items. We continue to adjust and try to get as real-time information as we can. In terms of asking where are we right now, we can certainly try to get a number, but it is still an estimate as we go in through and get the real-time information and finalize each of these cost object areas. So I think what we're doing in this exercise is trying to say, here's where we believe it costs to educate our students and to deliver the curriculum at which we see is valuable, based on looking at each one of these objects that you can see, kind of each cost center. And in terms of where can we cut, I don't even like to use that term. It's really is there anything can be delayed? And there isn't a lot of low-hanging fruit because respectfully, we've done that and we continue to do that because it's our job to bring you a budget that is kind of like 99% as lean as we can get it.
So I guess, and I'm getting off track here because we have places to go here as far as, more items. So what I'm envisioning is we'll get through tonight's agenda, and then next week we have, I believe, instruction and maintenance, or which I think could possibly be two relatively big ones in caucus. And then the next board meeting we have is the May board meeting where we have to approve this budget, and then it has to be put out to the community for 30 days, and then we have to vote on it and finally approve it at the next board meeting in June. So it doesn't give us much wiggle room. And so I'm thinking maybe, maybe caucus, we hear the rest of the budget, and hopefully by caucus we'll have a final, this is what we're projecting, and then the whole board can make a decision, do we feel things need to be cut? And we may need to have, I hate to say this, another budget meeting sometime between caucus and the May meeting, so that we can then be able to vote on something in May, because I don't know, with this time frame, I don't know that we will be able to vote on anything at May. Does that make
Sure.
sense?
Backing up, you're right. June is when the final budget needs to be approved. May is when the preliminary budget seeks approval. We cannot, you can remove a tax increase from May to June, but you can't add a tax increase from May to June, if that makes sense. You can always go down, but you can't go up in terms of your taxing
But
authority.
even without the tax increase, though, if I understand it correctly, tax increase or not, the preliminary budget has to be on display for 30 days.
Correct. Oh, 100%.
So regardless, we have to approve something preliminarily, even if it's like May 25th, and then we move our June board meeting to like the last day of June. But I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm just trying to picture how this is all going to come together, because that final number does, that will be a conversation that we need to have. And I do agree, there's not a lot of low-hanging fruit here. This is pretty tight. There are some things, but.
So I guess what you're asking, two things. The first thing is you certainly want to see what revenue versus expenses are and the deficit between the two. That's fair. And we'll get that number as soon as we can, no later than April. The caucus will give you a better look as to what that is. The second, yep, absolutely. Okay.
As you're looking for the next technology, I hate sitting here seemingly nitpicking over groceries for home ec or any of the, you know what I mean? I know how much that cafeteria sound is horrible. And I hate sitting here thinking, can we afford $7,000? They've been fine without sound, that cafeteria. I hate having those thoughts, and I hate having these conversations, and I don't want to look like that guy. Although, my wife says, and my father-in-law, I don't spend, they say I squeak when I walk, but I hate doing that but it is what we're charged, to do. And if we knew what we were looking at, it makes those conversations a little easier.
And kind of, again, dovetailing on what you just said, I don't like doing that either. I don't like to saying, well, do we really need an extra, KitchenAid mixer, or whatever. I think where I'm having a harder time is I can understand a little bit more about sound in the thing, or the KitchenAid mixer or the router. I don't know what the Guard 911 app is, that's $7,000. That's why I feel like in terms of the software and the apps, I don't know what all of that stuff is doing. So it's hard for me to go, oh, just keep it in there, because it's a lot. It adds up really fast in that area. So $360,000 fast, so
So a lot of these apps that you're looking at are pieces of software or technology, were previously also they weren't so rolled up in the technology. You would see them in elementary budget, middle school budget, high school budget. Like Guardian 911 app is a communication app used for safety and security. It notifies law enforcement and local law enforcement of an incident that occurs, and allows also for push communication in the event of an incident within the school itself. So it's an app that's located and can be put on a cell phone or an iPad. It's a communication mechanism. It's been here for a while. We certainly don't test it because there's a test mechanism, and we go over it with our new teachers at the beginning of new teacher induction. And those are always elements. Anytime, you have to understand, or please understand, anytime that there is grant funding, we always try to procure grant funding. As I will talk with you at caucus, and you'll see on the, and as I shared at the August or April 16th meeting, I'm asking for a resolution approval because there is a Department of Economic and Development Facilities grant that's out there. It's very complex, but it's one that we feel we need to be able to go after to improve HVAC, to be able to provide for roof repair and other important infrastructure repairs for our buildings. So those are the things that we're certainly willing to put the sweat equity into, knowing full well that we may or may not get them. But we will put that time in, because if we are successful, then that's worth the time necessary to, and the effort to apply for it. I can certainly go through each one of these, these programs if you would like to, so there's a better knowledge of what each one of these does. I think we can roll through probably in a half hour or so and go through each one of these categories, if you would like. I'll do my best, and I have a good team here that can help me.
Well, is it possible just, if people need that, to just add, like I think it was Leanne who brought up last week all the acronyms, like add in a parentheses what the item is, as opposed to you taking the time to just kind of do that right off the top of your head right now? I mean, you know, I'm okay either way.
I think you going through them now is going to tell all, if you do that, all it's going to tell me is that, yes, this is what it's used for. It would take longer to get into, do we really, really need it kind of thing. Like that, I guess that's, I know you have in here things that you have because you feel we need it. Like I understand that, but I'm still trying to figure out where we come up with the money with this deficit. Like, that's where I'm trying to figure that out.
So I think the interesting perspective that we're sitting here is, you know, we're going through what we need to be able to use to educate, and it's painstaking, isn't it? Because you're exactly right. How do we come up with a deficit of where we're at? And I can tell you, this is not a one-year problem. We're going to have a commitment, and I'm just going to say it and sit here, and I'm not going to be the most popular person in the world, but it's fair and honest, is this is a multi-year tax increase consideration. It is. But I also want to be mindful that the last couple of years, we will share historical data that taxes have not only stayed, they've actually went down because of the State Tax Equalization Bureau and, again, us as a board not using our levying power. And we were also mindful of using some of our fund balance for the last couple of years during a very, very difficult time, and we know that. And we've also committed some of our ESSER's money to continue programs. So this is a multi-year, unfortunate situation we're in to make that commitment.
Right. Short of the equalization formula, wasn't the last tax increase, like, you mentioned it to me, but it was a decade ago or something? It was a long, long time ago.
It's actually the 2016-2017 tax year. Perry County residents of the Susquenita School District paid more in taxes that year than they do today.
Okay. And then as far as all these apps and all that stuff go, I mean, obviously I'm fearful of the projected deficit as well, but things like that for me, my personal opinion is, I think we've positioned the proper people in their roles within the district and they've been tasked with trying to be lean, like was said, that, the fact that I don't know what all those apps do, and I don't really have time to learn all them, but we have the resources and staff in place that do, I feel like I don't really have any other choice but to trust that they have these things in the budget because they are necessary. That's, I understand we have to cut somewhere, but like I don't know that I'm in a position to question things like that, because I don't do Christine's job. I don't know what it takes to keep the network going and all the apps within the school district.
And I really, really respect that, and maybe it's just because I've been on the board for 13 years, but some of us have taken that stance and found out that the people that we were trusting were making mistakes. And so then that leaves me thinking I should have been more diligent. Because you could sit here thinking, why am I being a jerk and questioning all this? Because that's what we hired these people for. But been there, done that, and gotten burned in the past. And I tell anyone who asks, I feel our district's in the best place we've been in the 20-some years I've been in the district. I could not be happier with our administration, and my trust level is higher than it's ever been by far. But when you see someone like me doing that level of due diligence, it perhaps stems from that, right?
Yeah, and I think doing this by object and really getting into some of the detail, and then after this, being able to then take a look at the monthly comparison reports to what we've budgeted, and really that is wholeheartedly your responsibility to continue to be that, to see what those monthly reports are and how they relate to the budget overall and operations. That's exactly what we want too. And certainly we don't take this in any way, shape, and form. Otherwise, we all are in, a situation. We're all in and working together, and certainly, we're here to do the best we can. My goal is to continue. Our goal is to continue to ensure that our facilities are safe for our students, that we have the best qualified teachers to continue to teach, to keep our programs that are here, and to make sure that we're here to provide for what our students need and deserve. We've got some outstanding programs, some outstanding teachers that care and work tirelessly and endlessly. And I can tell you that they come with a budget that is lean to begin with too. And it's a total team effort. And I'm proud to work with each member of this team to present this to you.
Christine, could you go back to educational software and equipment technology, please? So if you'll notice, line 76 is blank, line 90 is blank, 111 is blank, 130 is blank, and 145 is blank. Those were items that were removed as of 12:30 today. This is our fourth time going through it, and each time we try to do the best we can. So I know you don't like the word cut, but
I have a nickname. I'm sure you guys gave me.
Dr. Cut.
When I was asking about the software and not knowing what it was for, is when we're going through this budget and there's things that we understand, like I said, a sewing machine or sound for the cafeteria, it's easy for us to go and look at that and go, do we really need that? But in terms of the software things, because we don't know what it's for, we kind of just write it off as, well, I guess we must need it. Do you understand? So I think it's almost unfair to the technology because we don't understand it, we just let it go through because we don't know what we don't know. That was the reason I was asking about it. Do I expect you to go through this right now and have you explain every one of them to me? No, but understand in terms of what Jonathan was saying about, or even Dr. Fox saying about the tax increases, at the end of the day, when that roll call vote goes around, nobody else is going to be voting on that except for us board members. We're the ones that are going to have to say yes to a tax increase or no. And I, being that steward of those tax dollars, feel like it's incumbent upon me to ask these questions. It may not, maybe for other people, that's not as necessary, but that is the reason I ask. It's not because I don't trust or think that people are just like spending money willy-nilly. I'm trying to figure out, because I don't know that I'm ready to ask taxpayers for multiple year tax increases when everybody is hurting right now in terms of inflationary things. So before I can say yes to that, I want to make dang sure that I've done my due diligence in this budget to ask the questions on it. And that's the reason why I am.
Can I offer a suggestion? If in the questions, and I know we weren't answering the questions prior, but if you want a specific one, if you're not sure about one of the specific ones, maybe put it in the questions and we can just give that information if we don't want to do it as a whole group.
Yeah, I can do that. Thanks.
But I think as a board, one of the things we do have to seriously consider is that if we want to offer a quality education, and I understand from a budgetary standpoint, everybody is hurting as far as increases, all of that piece. But if we want to continue to offer a quality education and we want to continue these improvements, one of the things we do seriously need to consider and be thinking about is this isn't a one-year fix. This isn't a one line item cut or several line item cuts. This is going to have to be a multi-year plan, which will include tax increases. And yes, as a taxpayer myself, as somebody who represents taxpayers, is that hard to hear? Is that hard to say? Absolutely. But this isn't going to be a one-item fix. We can't have it both ways. We can't have it that we want to offer and continue to offer quality education and do it that we're not going to be raising taxes, because at some point, something's going to have to give. And we want to continue to increase for salaries and have quality teachers. That's going to continue to cost money year over year. So our budget is going to continue to increase year over year. Cost of things are going to increase year over year. So something has to give, and we can't keep cutting. If we keep cutting, the only thing that's going to suffer is the education of our children.
All right, we'll move on to school library services. Starting at the elementary school, it's important to note we do run a school library program at the elementary school. To run a school library program, you have to have a certified librarian in accordance to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we're fortunate. Here within our district, we have 2 certified school librarians. Salary and benefits, as well as looking here at some basic supplies for the librarian. I can honestly say the school librarians have done an excellent job of taking a look at their book inventory and what they typically order for books, and making sure that it's been sharpened down to a much different number than you've seen in the past. And books are a lot like friends for school librarians, right? It's very tough to say, hey, let's look at. So they've pulled circulation, they've looked at different titles, they looked at what needs to be also removed, that's old and not taken anymore because you can only keep so many. So they're continuing to look at all of those aspects. You'll see the middle school as well.
So there was the one question I had. Are we paying $9 for a bookmark?
We're not. It's for stacks of them.
Because
But
I've got to go into the bookmark business.
line number 40 to 53 will be, lines number 40 to 54 will be removed. We'll get some, and we'll keep a little bit in there. Kids do love bookmarks. Anything scented is always pretty cool too, but we will take a look at that.
Yeah, put them in the school store.
That's a good idea. I do want one of the, if I could, I'll have to buy one of the peppermint ones. It
They'd
seems
probably go
soothing.
with the $200 cake pan.
We can make our own. We could bake our own. That's good. Same with 55 and 56, yeah.
Well, that's not per bookmark.
Yeah, that's what it's a lot.
It's a group, it's not just per.
Yeah.
It's not a $9 bookmark, it's $9.60. Oh, that makes more sense.
But it's still a really good idea to use those as incentives and put some in the student store. Use it as that positive behavior support rewards. '64 is laminating film. The school library does a lot of the laminating for all of the school. Laminating film is costly, but it seems like a lot of things get laminated, bulletin boards, posters, to be able to reuse those year after year after year. Books and printed material. High school. You'll see the half salary because it's half for middle school and high school. It's a split position. And she does a wonderful job and also teaches social studies. So that's something else I want to add to, is our staff is always willing and goes the extra mile. And a lot of times they will, if they have varying, multiple certifications, we utilize their talents and their certifications in a multitude of different ways.
I think she's still the yearbook advisor as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that is school library media. I do like this back button. That's here. That's very nice. All right. Driving down to 2370, which is community relations. There is salary and benefits for our community relations coordinator. $2380, Office of the Principal. Office of the Principal includes principals, assistant principal, secretaries, and some supplies for the principals. Feel free to ask them any questions.
So I had asked a question on the line 19. I noticed that the high school, I believe, and the elementary school both had down
Yeah.
$250 per new teacher for supplies. Middle school, I don't think had that.
So
But
that would-
per new teacher. And well, my question was, sounds more like a new teacher induction type thing, that when new teachers get a certain amount for supplies. But my other question was, and since we don't have supplies, we don't know, but it seems like a lot. Like if we have 6 first grade teachers, are we spending $1,500 a year for supplies? Plus the teacher that was already there probably ordered supplies, or do we just say, hey, here's 250, or do we say, if you need supplies and they aren't in your room, let me know, I'll try to see if I can get them for you? Like, how's that work?
So the plan certainly was for a new teacher walking in, if in fact it was something that they didn't have in there because they do something a little differently, or they look and all of a sudden they don't have A, B, or C, that's where that money would go because they didn't get a chance to be a part of this process. The middle school worked directly and has a pretty good layout. That's why it was removed at that point.
So we're not saying, you have $250 to get supplies for your classroom,
That's correct.
but they're going to the principal saying, I could really use some $9 bookmarks. Just kidding. I think it might be just poorly represented. It might be better if it was like, Because it says $250 each, but it says $1,000. That's assuming we're going to have 4 teachers, but we might have 6 new teachers. It might be better just to list an amount for new teacher supplies, take out the amount each. It might be more palatable, might make a little more sense.
Where all do we have laminators?
I'm sorry?
How many laminators do we have in the district?
3?
So there's one in the elementary school. Where's the one? Is there one in the middle school? Is that the one the librarian uses?
Yes.
And then there's one in the high school. Okay. I was just trying to figure out why the lamination for the elementary school was,
Higher.
yeah.
A lot of, well, it's our largest building.
Well, yes, I know that, and I know
And
they do a lot
elementary
more
teachers have a lot of bulletin boards that they do. Feel free as we go into finishing up elementary, if there's any questions there. Going into middle school. And high school. I think there was a question on line number 101, which is course selection books 200. That will be minimized and reduced. We are not printing 200 course selection guides. We do a lot of course selection guides right now that we push the course selection out to them through Jamf onto their iPads, and it goes right on the front of that as an interactive format, and there's videos in there as well, which they've done an awesome job of. And we will also have some print version and copies available as well, but not 200 of them.
And while we're there, 126, I put this in there. It says forum rental. It should probably just be graduation costs, because we don't rent the forum anymore or any longer. And I also had a question there about graduation tickets, but apparently you still have to do graduation tickets in case of inclement weather, and you have to go into the gym. Otherwise, anyone can come to graduation.
Well, we still try to limit it. We still have limited capacity within the stadium too as well, just because it hasn't been that filled, but it certainly could be. So we still allow for.
Yeah, why would we? Let's discuss that at some point. Why would we limit?
Well, I think depending on the size of the classes we have coming through, I don't know what is the capacity on that one side of the stadium. I'm not even sure. What is the capacity?
We very
there?
rarely have a lot of people. It's usually a lot of space, isn't there? Maybe not.
There's prime seating, and then there's the side view seating.
Good point.
And then there is, you're exactly right, that weather emergency when we need to go inside
That's
and pull out.
the reason why there was
the
more of the
bleachers.
limit, so that, I mean, I guess, well, yeah, right. Yeah, that's what I thought too.
And I've actually seen other districts where they allow people to bring up lawn chairs, and so they turn the stage sideways and put it at a goalpost, and they allow people, they have the graduates walk down the middle of the field, allow people to put lawn chairs on either side, and so you have prime seating on the field in front of the stage, and then you can put people on either side, so you can put people in the bleachers on either side.
I know this is completely not budget, but as long as we're talking about it, think about if there was any way to explore the possibility that all board members could sit on stage. The stage may not be symmetrical because the one side might be longer than the others, but when we did it at the forum and board members were all on stage, there was something special about that as opposed to just the 3 officers being on the stage and everyone else being down on the floor. I just throw that out as something to explore.
Electronic course selection. leads me to just, I hate to question it because the high five thing is cool and the kids, you know, get rewarded for good behavior and all those things. But $1,800 for pieces of paper that usually come home and go in the trash. Any chance we could do electronic high five? Like, do we have the ability to have something that pops up on their iPad that the teacher pushes, like a, you know, a pop-up notification on their iPad or something
there is.
when they get rewarded for a high five ticket or something like that? I mean,
Yeah.
shame on me, what?
High five tickets are still hanging on the side of my refrigerator.
Well, you're a better parent than I am.
You know, some people have electronic refrigerators where it could just, you could program it to automatically pop up. You need lettuce, and here's a 555 ticket.
We're not all high society like you, Dr. Jones.
I wouldn't know. We never got high five tickets in my house.
But to your point, Jonathan, I'm wondering, like, is there something that could almost be an, like, you know, you get your text message that says congratulations and like the, you know, could it go as an email that would go to the student and to their parent so that they would see it, you know, that they would see that they
Well,
got
the
the high
elementary
five?
students don't have email.
Oh, okay. Right.
I mean, they potentially Canvas, we could,
I don't know whether taking the iPad home matters to that, but I mean, no,
For-
the parent would get
For
an
what
email
it's
as
worth,
well.
I questioned the same thing last year because $1,800 for little slips of paper just seems a little redundant. But you know,
Is it for food or treats or something, or is it just?
no, it's the slips of paper that they write.
There are two copies.
Yeah.
It's like the NCR paper that
Yeah.
has the top part and the bottom part.
Couple things. One, just in our experience, kids love.
I think one thing, just looking through PBIS, there is a lot of online options. There's Class Dojo that teachers use within their classroom, and kids do enjoy getting that. There is a value to that tangible object that kids really like collecting, and providing that motivational that they have all these high five tickets. Look at this. I'm going to take it to the office. I'm going to put it insert it here. Kids collect it. Every classroom's getting them. They hang them on the wall. That tangible object, especially for the young kids, I think is really valuable for that. Now, do we need 3-ply carbon copy papers for the high five tickets? Potentially not. And, you know, other places they do have, you know, just copies of, you know, money that they use, or little paper money, and that could be our incentives. It is something that we are exploring as a PBIS committee. Looking at our high five tickets, the frequency of use, maybe upping the use of it. However, not necessarily in this way, but transitioning to more just, we have one piece of paper that prints off, you know, 20 copies of that incentive. So there are those things that we are considering, but for right now, just based off what we use and how many high five tickets we do give daily, weekly updates of how many high five tickets that we've collected over the course of the year. I think we're over 16,000 high five tickets collected.
As you're talking, it dawns on me that companies like Life Touch, you know, that we hire them. I think we still work with them to come in and take our pictures, and they have no problems in bigger districts anyway of how many posters do you want, or how many this do you want, or whatever. Someone like a Life Touch, or maybe even Herf Jones or whoever we might order yearbook stuff from, although we can't get an $80 one for our office. But you know, it's like a company like that, they if we could get them to print the high five things and it have Life Touch name on it, that's advertisement for them. They might even do it for us for free. So
Yeah.
something to think about.
We use Colin and Company. They haven't used Life Touch for a number of years.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
What is the difference between the high five tickets? I mean, I know there's a difference, but explain to me the difference between the high five tickets and high five prizes.
So the high five prizes would just be our PBI, we call it high five values. And so the prizes that go along with that would just be anything PBIS related that we're incentivizing students, whether it's our prize box, whether it's ice cream, our glow parties that we have, just different supplies that we need for our monthly incentives and any other sort of prizes. So it's just the name of it.
Okay. So, I mean, how does this, I know when a child gets a high five ticket, or, but what would delineate them getting a high five prize as opposed to just being noted for high five tickets?
Yeah, so that's an option. Some places have, something we explore too is cashing tickets in so they're able to monetize it. We don't use it necessarily for that, but that's what I was saying, that maybe if we can print more and have those tangible things go into a school store and getting a fidget spinner, whatever they would want to. But to get I guess more of our prizes are more for what we're using now is more for the group prizes, whether that's ice cream that we're serving at lunches, for our monthly incentives. We like I said, we've done a glow stick party, buying popcorn, different things throughout the year that we're trying to incentivize and having kids gain more high five tickets for.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be a lot of times it's not an individual prize that we're giving a student after they get a high five ticket.
Okay. Because I see the ice cream party on there listed as a separate line item, the glow party, concert. I just didn't know. I didn't know what the steps were to.
So isn't there, correct me if I'm wrong, too, class incentives, right? Like grade levels, and then there would be school-wide, too. So if the school earns so many different high five tickets, we can throw a pie in Mr. Hamilton's face or something like that, perhaps. Maybe I made that one up.
I would hope that doesn't cost $2,200.
Insurance, no.
But I when I first saw that too, I was like, that's a lot of money. Not just that, but all of it. But it's a proactive way to address behavior. It will cost us a lot more for a bunch more, AEDY placements a couple years later, So like these are incentives for positive behavior. It's always a different, I don't like anti-bullying programs per se. I would rather do character ed programs, not a reactive, don't bully, but a proactive, this is good character, this is how we behave. So when I first saw that and I was wrestling a little bit in my head, I think it's really good to incentivize good behavior. And I do believe it makes a difference.
Yeah, for sure.
And to be fair to my kids, we have had high five tickets in my house. Maybe one. Nope, just kidding.
Going back to the course selection handbook thing, I don't want to speak for the rest of the board, but when you bring the draft version of that, I don't need that to be printed out either. I mean, if we have that available to us digitally, I don't need that to be printed out. So if that saves printing of 15 other one of them, I think when we have an iPad, if it's available to us digitally, that would be fine.
Except we don't get it until the time we sit down at the meeting. If I'm going to see it for the very first time at the meeting when it's discussed, I want a hard copy. You know what I mean?
Right, but maybe we can get it digitally before the meeting, and then we wouldn't be getting it.
These are the course additions and changes, when we have that meeting.
Yeah, but but in terms of that, like, the addition, changes, and
Never get a hard
deletions or
copy
whatever
of
are usually only like a 2-page document, right? Then we get the draft handbook, which is essentially almost the same thing year over year, except for these changes. So if you don't need to print, for me, you don't need to be printing out a 30-page handbook, draft handbook, for us to review here. If you want to print out the changes to highlight that, that's fine, but you know what I mean? I'm just trying in terms of when they were saying about
And that's the
cutting
same
that
plan we
back.
have with the code of conducts as well moving forward. We'll make any changes in a different color and send that out to you so you see the changes in a different color. So we're not, well, number one, spending hours of your time reviewing the same document, and then we can go right to the areas that are a different color or track changes, whatever.
But we still need to keep in mind there are people in this district who do not have network connection at home. So those children need to be able to have the opportunity for their parents just to see this information.
Yep, and when you download it on your device, you don't need internet connectivity to be able to have it on your desktop. That's one of the cool features on an iPad. You can have that offline capability, and it's there, and it's going to function just as it would.
I have a question about 157, which is honors, medals, valedictorian, salutatorian plaques. $1,000. Do we really spend $1,000 on those? Okay. So who, like, I know the valedictorian and salutatorian get plaque, but is that just a medal just for those two? Or are we talking, or is that for the top 10 members of the class?
No, so the actual plaques that are handed out at graduation are just for the valedictorian and salutatorian, but then there's also all of the medals that you'll see at like the senior award ceremony. Anybody who was on, distinguished honors or honors that they come up and get their medal that goes around the neck that has their name and everything on it that says that. It goes towards that or any other awards that are given out during that time. So that senior award night that you'll see all the different awards that are handed out and given there.
Okay. And then I had another question about whether 161 is in the right location in the budget.
That is for the ability to after-school tutoring. When we looked at those categories, certainly under the discretion of the principal to be able to run those academic programs, and it didn't necessarily fall, we didn't think, in any other categories because of being academic-based. It's not an after-school club or activity per se, but a tutoring session. So we kind of put it under the office of the principal.
Okay.
All right, that concludes, if there's no other questions, on the office of the principal. And that takes us to pupil health services. We will start with elementary school. Outstanding nurse and an outstanding LPN. The LPN is fantastic. She will also provide substitute services when there's a nurse out, and also go on field trips that are co-curricular as well, which is much needed, and it doesn't really, it's for us. She's able to know the students, and it's fantastic. And we don't have to contract with a third-party agency to provide a substitute nurse coverage during that time. Under supplies, some basic supplies that you would see in a nurse's office.
I don't know if I'm kind of jumping ahead, but
Sure.
just in regard to supplies. So I noticed like supplies for the elementary school was around 568, for the high school 557, but the middle school is 2,146. And I don't know why that stands out the way that it does. I just thought that it seemed to stand out to me. I do note that in the middle school, they have boxes of crackers that are $255, but in the high school, that's listed as a miscellaneous expense. So I don't know why that's listed as a miscellaneous expense in the high school, but not in the elementary school for the same crackers. But that still doesn't seem to account for. But so I didn't know whether it was one of those things where was the middle school putting something in their budget, and then do they share with the other schools?
Well, they certainly do share. They're an outstanding team that shares supplies as needed.
Middle school has $299 thermometer probe covers listed
That the other two don't have.
That the others don't.
Correct. That's
That's
what I'm just so-
$300. That's probably about your $300 difference between your middle school and your high school. If you move the high school,
It's a $1,500 difference. It's 2,000 to 500.
hold on. Okay, I'm sorry, the cracker, you're right, it's higher than I thought. If you move the crackers up into the high school, that covers 200 of it.
Yeah,
And then you
right.
take the 300 out, it gets it closer, but it is still off by
And
a little over a little less than 1,000.
so I guess my question is, are the $290 of probe covers being shared, or did middle school and elementary school not put in that line item that should be in there? Like, I don't know how many of those probe covers they go through in a given year, but did they not put a line item in that they needed?
And the heat packs that are in there,
That certainly I'd have to go back, and they may just be inventorying what they currently have and what they went through. And over the years, they may have already ordered those or had a different type of thermometer that they currently use.
Okay.
Maybe one's a temporal scanner versus one that goes in your ear. So I'm not really sure, but I do know they definitely do an outstanding job of using what they have and inventorying what's currently in there.
And then I think I had a question about that there was EpiPens listed for the high school, but nowhere else. Do we not need EpiPens in the other?
No, that's going to be, that EpiPen, Mark, I believe, is universal. So that's going to be for all three buildings. When we look at EpiPen, where it says miscellaneous expenses, pupil, high school, that really should be also miscellaneous expenses, pupils, district, because the EpiPen 600, I believe it's for the district. I'll have to look at that and make sure. But yes, they will need to be ordered for all three buildings based upon if they expire or not. And it could be maybe the other two buildings' expiration dates is another year. We'll have to take a look at that and see.
Can we get those for free? I thought there was a program.
There is some programs, and we have tried to get onto certain programs. I believe that was something that they've marked on here before, that they're trying to get into a state program to be able to get those. I know a couple years ago there was a big-time shortage of those.
And typically, the elementary school probably the elementary school and the middle school should probably have an EpiPen junior and an adult because they're weight-based.
And then the only thing I saw as a correction is line 76. You had that listed as total supplies, people services. That should be middle school, not high school there.
Great. Thank you very much. That is pupil health. Moving into student transportation 2720. You'll see a very large item for contracted carriers and contracted services. Our contracted transportation services, we transport all students. We are not a walking district. There are no sidewalks within our district in which students can walk to school. So we transport all students, and all students are rostered to our buses.
Do you have any idea what it would cost if we put a sidewalk into Duncannon and Marysville?
No, I do not.
Bike lane. We want a bike lane.
Or like a moving, like they have in the airport? People mover, yeah.
Maintenance on that, precious. They're always out when you go to the airport. They never work properly. Non-public transportation. 2750, our responsibility to transport non-public students to within the framework, and it's specified by code as to the mileage.
How long is our contract with Roars negotiated for?
It's through 25, 26, right?
Is it 25, 26? Through the 26 school year.
And then we have to renegotiate.
That's correct. So yes, I believe that is our last category for this evening. At caucus, we will do 11:10, 25:10, 26:20, and 32:10, which is school-sponsored student activities, which that will include marching band and other activities that are after school. So we still have some work to do. Appreciate all of your time. Also on April 9th, we will work on giving an update as to where we are with expenses versus revenue. But I do want to also say, remember, it is also important for us to note that oftentimes, I believe it's the governor's budget is not, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, is not due until June. So we are having to kind of do some predictions, and we try to flatline a lot of subsidy from year to year when it comes to basic ed subsidy, because we're not going to predict something that may not be in the budget. So that's important to note as well. We hope for an increase in that subsidy. We hope for certainly an increase to IDEA to fund it to the levels that it was promised when it was first came out with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act under the federal government. And we also hope for continued grants without a lot of attachments, certainly as they come through, to allow us to be able to continue to offset some of these expenses. Because right now it is, when we look at revenue, almost a near split between state, federal, and local subsidy in terms of what we're able to generate in terms of revenue. So, yeah, we do have some certainly some work to do. It's good work. We appreciate all the time, and we hope that this exercise of review is beneficial for everybody.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody. All right, looking at the agenda here, the meeting schedule reminder. Next Tuesday, policy committee and caucus, and then the following Tuesday, regular board meeting. You did get me with the whole Wednesday thing, because just so you know, I may or may not have showed up in the parking lot last night to come to this meeting.
And we'll do budget next week as well, correct? We'll do the instruction and maintenance.
Yeah.
And I will apologize ahead, I won't be in town next week, so I'll miss that meeting, but that'll be part of the caucus.
It will. It'll be towards the end of the caucus. We'll reserve it for budget update. Yep.
All right, this time, are there any public comments? Anything on, nothing online? All right. At this time, I will make a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Where's
All right.
your
Any
motion?
Yep, exactly.